Hello everyone, this is Thor Peterson with Crow. Today I'm sharing a quick video on how you might use table calculations in Tableau to see changes from month to month or compared to a rolling average. In this exercise, we'll create a dashboard to help us see changes in net revenue and apply filters at the region and source facility level. As always, feel free to follow along with your own data. Let's go ahead and get started. So this is the dashboard that we're looking to create. It's a net revenue comparison. We're comparing our net revenue, which is our net revenue after change in prior for the current period versus an average. And that average is defined currently as a trailing 3-month average, but we've got a parameter to control that variable. So we can change it from 3 to 6 and our title changes along with our average, or even 9 or 12. So I'll go back to 3 here. So we've got our net revenue, our average or trailing average net revenue over the last 3 months, dollar variance, percent variance. So here we've got our month-to-month table, so we can see changes from month to month. And as you can see, our unfavorable changes, decreases in net revenue are coded in red versus the increasing net revenue or favorable revenue, net revenue changes are in black. So we're grouping this by net revenue, our change, and our percent change. Grouping that by source facility as well. We've included a region filter here, so I can easily filter by specific regions, or all, or look at a different region. And then you can see that we've got a grand total down here. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new Tableau workbook. Give that a moment to tee up here. And first thing I'll do is make sure that I'm connected to my server. And I'm connecting to my Tableau demo server. You should have a URL to connect to your own Tableau server. So I'll go ahead and connect to that. And from here, I'll click this Connect to Data link and choose my Tableau server. So depending on your version of Tableau Desktop, you may have Tableau server up here, or you might find it in this To a Server section. So I'll click Tableau server. And from here, I'm going to choose monthly trended. So as I mentioned, the first thing that I wanted to do is create this this table here that shows my month-over-month changes. So let's get started on that. So I'm going to start by bringing in my source facility and finding that on the dimensions card, drag that up to rows. And then I'll find my ATB date. Those are the dates that we use to group our net revenue. So I'll grab ATB date here. I'm going to go ahead and right-click on that ATB date pill, and I want to choose month. And so that's the month and year continuous date part. Click month. And then I'm going to go to the Show Me card here and change this back to a text table. So now I've got my months that are included in my monthly trended. And so now what I want to do is I want to find, and I've got this set to group based on those folders. I'm going to change that so that it has a group by folder. And that's just by clicking on this little Jeremy drop down and choosing group by folder as opposed to group by source table. Has to do with the way that this extract was created. Yours may be a little bit different. So anyways, we're going to scroll down here and look for our VA net revenue. So here's my VA net revenue. I'm just going to double click there to add it to my view. So here I can see for the period of January, I can see all of my net revenue here. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is create a table calculation to calculate the change from one month to the next. And the way that I do that is by looking for the marks card and looking for the specific value that's represented on the marks card. So I can drag this sucker out a little bit here so I can read the whole field. So on this pill, there's a drop down. I'm going to go ahead and click that drop down and choose quick table calculation. And so here on the quick table calculation, I've got a difference. I'll click that difference on the menu, and now I can see the change from one month to the next. So how do we know this is right? Let's go ahead and find our net revenue field on the measures card, and we'll go ahead and drag that onto our view. So now we've got two items on our measures value card. We've got our difference and we've got our net revenue. I can change the order of these very easily here just by clicking and dragging this pill down below the other one, and that changes the order. So now I can see that I've got these values here in this change. So the difference between 4.5 million and 6.9 million is 2.4 million. And so if you wanted to, you could actually copy this out by clicking worksheet on the menu, click copy, click cross tab, and then going in and opening Microsoft Excel. We can paste that in. And so here, if you wanted to do your own validation, just make sure that you feel comfortable with that calculation. So let's just see what that difference is. 2.4 million, so these numbers match. So that's a good enough test for me. I'm going to go ahead and keep moving forward. So I can see here I've got my net revenue, and I've got my difference in net revenue, or my change. The next thing I want to do is calculate that percentage change, which is, again, pretty easy to do. We're going to start with this net revenue pill, and we're going to use a table calculation there, quick table calc, and percent difference. Okay, so now we can see that we've got a 53% change, and we want to add our net revenue measure back to the measure values card here. So we can see the different order here. So modifying the order so that we've got our net revenue, our change, and our percent change. So now we can see that we had 4.5 million last month. I've got 6.9 million this month. I've got a $2.4 million change, and that's 53.5%. And so for now, the tooltips are getting in my way a little bit. I'd rather just turn those off. So I'm going to click on the marks card. I'm going to click the tooltip button, and then uncheck the show tooltips. Click OK. All right. So now when I hover over this, they don't pop up. So that's great. So what else do we want to do here? I'd like to give these field names an alias. So let's jump in and do that real quick. So this is my net revenue. So I'll right click there, choose edit alias, call that net revenue. Right click, call this change. Right click, edit alias, call this percent change. So now we're pretty much done with that. One thing that I'd like to do here is remove this banding. It doesn't really serve a purpose for me right now. And I can edit this by going up to, excuse me, up to Format on the menu. Choose Shading. And I'm going to run the row banding size down to 1, which removes it all together. Then on this format pane, I can close that once I'm done with it. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to do here is change these values so that when they're negative, they're red, and when they're positive, they're black. So the way we do that is by grabbing this measure values mark, and I'm going to go ahead and click on it, click Control on my keyboard, and drag it up to color, and then drop it. And so now what you'll notice is we've got this color range here. That means the more positive it is, the darker the blue, and the more negative it is, the darker the orange. So let's go ahead and change this. I can do that by clicking on Color and clicking Edit Colors. So here's our measure values color. So what I want to do is I want to make this red. So I'll just click here, choose red, and click OK. Then I want this to be black. So I'll click here, choose black, and click OK. Now I want the color steps to be 2 because I want it to be either red or black. So I'll go ahead and drop this down to 2. And then on advanced, I really only want to know the center point and have that defined to 0. Everything else is it's either going to be negative or it's going to be positive. So I don't care about the start and end because I know my center point is 0. I'll click apply here and click OK. OK. So now you can see that all my negative amounts are red and all my positive amounts are blue. And I don't really need this legend here, so I can click drop down and click hide. Okay. So the last thing that I want to do here, actually a couple things to clean this up, are these dates. Now you might be fine with this date format, but if you want to make a change here, what I recommend you do is just pick one of the dates and right click on that, choose format, and then come over here to the format card on dates, drop this down, and I like to use the custom and go with a format of month dash YYYY. And then just clicking off of that card. So now I've got a nice, neat month, year, period. And then I'll hide this month of ATB date by right-clicking on it and choose Hide Field Labels. Also, the source facility is just extra noise here. The column is valuable, but this title, I'm going to remove that. So I'll right-click on the source facility title and then hide field labels for rows. Okay. So now that we've got that done, I'm going to come down here. Just show you. So I'm going to come down here to this sheet, and I'm going to name this month over month change. All right. Okay. So let's take a look at our other workbook here. And so we've got our facility, net revenue change, percent change. We've got our months. Looks like everything's in order. One thing that we could do here, looks like I've got this bolded. So let's go ahead and bold this format here on the measures. So if I come over here to my format pane, and if you don't have the format pane, just right click on one of these values, click format, and then choose fields and measure values. And on the default font, we're going to go ahead and click the bold icon there, and then close our format window there. All right, so we should be all set there. So I mentioned that we wanted to have a region filter. So let's add that region filter here. So we're going to go to dimensions, find region, drag that onto filters. So for now, we'll select all and click OK. All right, perfect. So that's there, and we can use it later when we bring this onto a dashboard. So let's go ahead. Right now would be a good time to save this. So we'll click File, Save As. Just find a spot to go ahead and save this. So I'll just save this to my desktop and give this a name, Net Revenue Comparison. And click Save. Let me try a different location. There we go. All right, so I've got this saved. And let's go ahead and take a look at the next part here. So this section here, we want to do a little bit of a different comparison than month to month. We want to use a table calculation that is a running calculation. So let's go ahead and investigate that. So in this calculation, we're going to go ahead, or in this section, we're going to create a new worksheet. So new worksheet there. And then I mentioned that I wanted to do a table calculation looking at a rolling average. So we're going to start with our ATB date. We're going to right click on that ATB date, choose month on the continuous month on the menu here. Again, we're going to do net revenue. So I'll find VA net revenue on my measures card. Double click there. On the show me card, I'm going to go ahead and make this a text table and then close the show me card. Okay, so here what I really want to do is in the January column, I want to calculate a trailing number of months here, okay, on my average. So to start, let's go ahead and check this out. So I know that I want to use this value, so that's represented by this mark. So I'll drop down that pill, click Add Table Calculation this time. So I'm going to be a little bit more deliberate about what I'm calculating. On the calculation type, I'm going to choose Moving Calculation. And instead of sum, I'm going to choose average. I'm going to choose the previous 3 values and not include my current value. So then I'll click on this little table calculation wizard here. So I'm going to choose, I can choose table across, but in this case I want to choose specific dimensions because once I'm finished, I'm going to actually flip the axis. So I want to define this as month of ATB date. So this is clicked. And I'll go ahead and click close. Okay, so this is calculating, again, the trailing 3-month average. And I can check that again if I'd like. So VA net revenue, double click there. And then, so now I can see I've got my moving average here. And if I wanted to go in and copy this cross tab out to a spreadsheet, paste it. Now we can do a manual calculation to say, equal average. So 255, 105, 465. So I feel good about that. I'll go ahead and close that. So I've got my 3 months here. So how do we create a parameter to change this calculation, right? So if I double click on measure values to look at that calculated field, double clicking here, I can see that, it's got a -3 and a -1. This is telling me to go count back 3 columns, starting with the previous column. So it's saying start with 1 column back. So start with this column and then count 3, 2, 3. So that's what this tells me. So what I can do is I can actually insert a parameter here. So let me show you how we do that. And we're going to start by clicking on Jeremy here to create a parameter. And I'll call this N. Data type is going to be integer. Current value, I'm going to set it to 3. And let's see, allowable values in a list. I'm going to specify 3 or 6 or 9 or 12. And click OK. All right, so now that I've got this N parameter, I can jump back into this calculation. I'm going to double click on it. And where this 3 is found here, I'm going to enter a bracket, number 3, and another bracket. Actually, N, sorry. Okay, so that's purple, and that indicates it's referencing a parameter. So then I'll click enter on my keyboard. All right, and I want to show my parameter, so I'll right click that parameter, show control. And so now I can see that I've got 3 selected here, or 6, or 9, or 12. And again, you can go ahead and copy this out to a spreadsheet if you wanted to verify or validate that calculation. So now that we've got that created, what I only want 1 month. I'm really interested in my current period. So I want to hide the rest of these periods. And the way that I do that is by using an index to count these columns. And then I'm going to hide all of the columns except for this 13th column. So I'm going to go ahead and double click in that column shelf, type the word index, open and close, press enter. It defaults it to a continuous calculation. We want a discrete calc. So now you notice that it's numbering the columns here. And I can simply click 1, shift click 12, and right click, choose hide. So we don't want to filter these out. We only want to hide them because we need that historical information for the calculation, right? The next thing that I'd like to do is go ahead and change the order here, right? I also want to save this. I want to save this calculation here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that pill over here to my measures card, drop this in there, and rename it VA net revenue trailing average. Okay. So now you'll notice that our title changed also. But the reason I saved it over here is I want to use that in another calculation. Specifically, I want to show the difference between this and this, right? So let's take a closer look at that. So let's create a new calculation, new calculated field. So it's going to be a right click on our VA net revenue and create calculated field. So I want to sum VA net revenue, because this is not yet aggregated, and subtract VA net revenue trailing average. This is already aggregated with an average in the calculation, so I don't have to re-aggregate that. I'm going to name this VA net revenue trailing average, or I'm sorry, net revenue variance. And I'll click OK. So now when I drag this, so let's find it. Here it is. Drag that up to measure values. Now I can see that I've got an $11 million variance, or a change, right? Compared to my average. So let's now calculate that as a percent of the trailing average. So I'm going to right click on my net revenue variance, create calculated field, and then divide by my average. So this is VA net revenue variance percent. Click OK. So we're going to go ahead and give this a format. So I'll right click on this, default properties on the menu, and number format. Percentage, I'm just going to use 1 decimal. And as I drag that up to measure values, now I can see that I've got a 4.4% variance or change. Okay. All right. So we've got all the components that we need here. Like I did with the other sheet, I'm going to remove the banding here. I'm going to click on Format, Shading, and run this band size down to the first tick mark there. And I'm going to close that. The next thing that I'd like to do is change these aliases. So I'm going to refer back to this. So I want net revenue, average net revenue, percent variance to average, and percent variance to average. I'm sorry, dollar variance to average and percent variance. So net revenue, that's already aliased because we have that calculation aliased on our other page. Average net revenue is right here. So I'll right click, call this average net revenue. So then I'm going to right click. This is my dollar change. Okay. And then this is my percent variance. so now that we've got these all set, what I'm going to do is change the switch the axis so that they're horizontal rather than vertical. So we're going to go ahead and swap columns for rows. Okay. I don't need this month or this index, so what I'm going to do is right-click and I'm sorry, let me right-click on the January and not show the header. So I'm going to click this, and then I'm going to right-click on 13 and uncheck Show Header. All right. So now I've got, oh, it looks like since I changed the columns for rows, looks like I lost my alias there. Okay. So I'm going to right-click here. Oh, that's because the actual calculation changed, right? So instead of calculating down as it was before, I'm sorry, across as it was before, now it's calculating down. No big deal. Let's go ahead and just make a change to this alias, edit alias, and we'll call this $variance. And right click and call this %variance. All right, no big deal. Click OK there. All right. So so now what I'd like to do is change, I guess, the size here of the fonts. And I don't remember specifically what I went with, but we can go ahead and just kind of tinker with it and see if we can get it right. So I'm going to change this so that it's fit width. So going to the toolbar, fit width, and let's format. Let me take that back. Let's format the measure values. Let's see if that'll work. Okay. Okay, so the default font is set to 9. If we change that to 12, let's go a little bit bigger. Let's go with 18. Okay, perfect. And then on the measure names, I think I can format that as well. Format. So let's go with the same number there. I think I chose 18, right? All right, sweet. So then I want to change the, right now they're right justified. Let's center the justification there. So there's a little icon here for alignment. So on the pane, I'm going to choose center, and we're good to go. All right, so then the last thing I'd like to do is remove this, this line that surrounds the visualization there. So let's go ahead and change this border, and on the row divider we're going to drop down and say none, and on the column divider we're going to drop down and say none. So that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and rename this sheet here to be trailing average change. Okay. So now what we can do is we can combine these into a dashboard. So we're going to go ahead and click New Dashboard here at the bottom. And let's start with our month-over-month change. We'll drop that on the canvas there. We don't have enough room for this, so let's just go ahead and extend this here using the size. Drop this down, and let's go with 1500 on width, and let's go with height of 900. Okay. So the trailing average change is going to go here to the top. So we'll drag that off the sheets there and drop it right here on top. You'll notice we have our parameter here. Let's go ahead and shrink the height here. I think that we're good to go so far. I'd like to actually move this container over to the left. So I'm going to just click on the container itself and grab this little handle here, drag it over to the left, and change the size. Okay. And then let's fit this worksheet to width. So I clicked on the worksheet. You can see I've got the handle here now. drop down, fit width. Okay, so we've got a good start here. Let's go ahead and just drag this up a little bit. And I mentioned that we wanted to add the region filter. So let's go ahead and do that. So we know that we've got a region filter on this month-over-month change. I'm going to go ahead and click this drop down here and choose filters and region. So now you'll see that we've got our region filter here. And when I interact with this, it only changes my table. So I want to change this filter so that it filters everything using this data source. So on the filter, click drop down, apply to worksheets, all using this data source. So now when I unselect all and I choose Northeast, now I just see the Northeast information. Okay. I'll mention here also I don't have my totals yet. So let's go ahead and add those totals into this worksheet. So I've clicked on this worksheet. You see the handle here. Go to Analysis, Totals, Show Column Grand Totals. So now I can see that I've got 61,510,000. That foots. I've got a 3.8% change month to month. And for Northeast region, I'm looking at a 3-month trailing average. I've got a $600,000 variance, and it's represented as 1%. Let's make sure that this parameter is still working. So 6 months or 9 months, looks like we're good. So we would expect this parameter only to change this top portion here, since this is where we're doing the trailing average, and this is month to month. So further on from here, I can do lots of tweaking here. If I wanted to, move this down a little bit, I can do that. I could also, add a blank up here, and then drag this portion down so that it's further down, and then just kind of, tweak this so that it looks like everything's lined up, right? So I can also change this N title. So I clicked on the parameter, drop down, click Edit Title, select Average, or select Trailing Average. I could add a filter here, or I could add a title here as well. Drop down, edit title, select a region. Okay. So now I'm looking at all the regions, or just a specific region or regions. And that pretty much wraps it up. Let's just check this out and see if there's anything that I missed. Looks like I could do some bolding here on the values. I could change my titles. So let's change the title real quick. That's a good exercise, because when I change this parameter, I want that to be reflected here in the title. So let's do that. So this is net revenue comparison. So I'll double click on this title, and then I'm going to erase the sheet name, call this net revenue comparison. I'm going to press the enter button and type in trailing space, go to my insert button, go to parameters, N, months. And then I like to just make this a different font or a different size. So I'll choose 10 there and click OK. So now you can see this is our net revenue comparison. We've got trailing 3 months. Actually, let's make that bigger. So net revenue comparison, let's make that 20. Let's make it bold. All right. And then that should be good. On our month over month change, we can change this also to be net revenue change month over month. So I'll double click here. Net revenue change month over month. All right. So that pretty much wraps it up. Let's go ahead and save this one more time. and just giving it a quick look. Looks like I could do a better job with this title here, so I'm going to double click here. Current month versus trailing 3-month average. So current month versus trailing 3-month average. Okay. All right. That ought to do it. I hope you enjoyed this session, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a great day.